Okay, welcome to the ninth in our journeys down the Old Shoreham Road to Enlightenment, the world's most open-minded podcast. With me today is Ed Hamell, otherwise known as Hamell on Trial. He's the love child of Bill Hicks and Bob Dylan, and America's foremost punk rock troubadour. How's it going, Ed?
It's going well, thank you.
Brilliant. How would you describe your music to the invading alien overlords?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm sort of making a transition currently. Nobody knows it yet. My last two records were recorded totally acoustic on my phone. So I would describe myself at that point as, desperate, but, so it was unquestionably acoustic based because that was out of, I didn't really listen to a lot of folk music growing up. I mean, other than it was always the rock guys like Dylan or Neil Young or, I don't know, is Leonard Cohen acoustic? I guess not. Initially he was, and then later he got more advanced. But anyway, singer-songwriters necessarily weren't but I was kind of in the, initially rock and roll and then sort of punk rock. And then, but I wanted to make music my life. And the easiest way at that time, I mean, I can see why kids could just have, you could be like Sleaford Mods now and just have a laptop and you wouldn't need to. But at that time, you needed to have a band. And as I got older, it became increasingly difficult to put the carrot in front of the horse and keep a band together as people got older. So I sort of became acoustic. I might have been in my 30s, really. I mean, early 30s. But it was a mobility factor. And it was, I want to make music my life and how can I make a living? So I became, by necessity, an acoustic artist. So it's kind of thrashy and it's unquestionably politically, it's funny, I hope, and it's sort of political, I hope. And, the other thing about being solo is I used to make a joke about, we all showed it at rehearsal on time. We were all sober and we all agreed on the material, so it was obviously easier to premiere a song without having to deal with a committee, I guess, As an American, the Americans, it's the solo artists, it's Elvis, it's Sinatra, and Eminem, and in England, it's the bands. You guys are better team players. I don't know, maybe that's what they're doing.
I mean, you have so many great albums. There's Big as Life, Tough Love, Tubes Town. The Pandemic album that you that brought out recently, that you referred to, that is great too.
Thank you.
I want to give you a little bit backstory about me. I first saw you supporting Annie DeFranco in London. It was like 2008 at the Forum in Islington. I was there with my girlfriend under protest. I was stood at the bar like a grumpy boyfriend, and then you came on and blew my mind. I immediately went to the merch table and bought your live album, which is right here. It's called Ed's Not Dead, which to the chagrin of my now ex-wife. It's called Ed's Not Dead, and that refers to a car accident you had. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was on the way to a gig. Thankfully, to just sort of segue from what we were talking about last, it was years I got signed to Mercury. I lived in Austin for a while and I was doing my solo thing. They were, bless them, they were very embracing of my idiosyncratic acoustic thing, punky acoustic, I guess. And then I got signed to Mercury Records and then did a couple albums with them. And the good news about being on a major is I was able to, sort of expand my touring base and make a living. and I was on my way to Pittsburgh, and I got forced off the road. And I had just bought. Turns out, for those of you that don't know, you don't buy odd numbers of tires. You buy either 2 or 4, because if you buy 1 or 3, and I bought 3, then turns out the equilibrium of your traction does not hold. So I was forced off the road, and my car flipped over a couple of times, and I broke T1 to T3 in my back, and 82 staples in my head, broke my wrist, broke my ankle, whatever. And I was out of work for about 9 months. I was in an upper body brace. And Ani, when I was touring with Ani, they were recording all my shows live. And they were nice enough. Scott Fisher, who was the president of her label at the time, I was on Righteous Bay for 12 years. They were very good to me. I'm here to tell I'm an oddity in the terms of, I've never really had a bad experience in a record label, believe it or not. I've been in about 5, 6 of them. They've all been good to me. But anyway, maybe I went in with realistic expectations. Who knows? But so they were nice. They were like, "Hey, Ed, how you making any money?" And I'm like, "I'm not." And they were like, "Would you like these tapes gratis?" They gave me the tapes, and then another label that I was on, actually later, they said, "Oh, we'll New West." They said, "We'll manufacture them for you." So everybody was just benevolence. They were just sweet, and we did that live album. Ani did sign me to her label immediately after that, but that one that you have, I put out independently to make money to survive that 9-month thing. So 9-month, not being able to be on the road.
I mean, I love this record so much. Since I saw you, it's a lot harder to get your stuff here. So I've had to kind of like I go on like Bandcamp, which I'm going to plug later on, and this is a really, really great place to get your music. And you have this wonderful thing of not many people on there too, is that you write loads about each of your records, and it's fascinating, the story of each one. Tell us how you met Ani.
Hey, I have to interrupt, just out of curiosity. Where are you based now?
I'm in Brighton in the UK.
In Brighton. I had a friend, a dear friend. He passed away, but he was actually my driver over there. He was from Wales, and it sounds like you have a similar accent. That's the only reason I was asking. You reminded me of.
I'm actually from the northeast.
Okay. Wales is sort of the northeast, isn't it? No, it's northwest, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's down. But I'm up near Newcastle.
You're way up.
Yeah,
you're way up.
Yeah.
Eric Burden and the Animals are from Newcastle. That's the coal mines.
Yeah, I'm not.
Don't tell people from Newcastle they sound like they're Scottish. I've made that mistake. You're very allegiant to.
I was just trying to give you a reference. I'm actually from away from there, but it's especially when I speak to Americans, it's the closest place to where I'm from. I'm probably still 50 miles away from Newcastle, but it's when I say Middlesbrough, most people in America probably don't know where that is. But yeah, the closest place that you probably know is Newcastle.
Yeah.
But anyway, you might have better knowledge than that. I don't know. Tell us about how you met Ani and then got to sign to her label.
Oh, that was through a dear friend. So when I lived in Austin, I got a gig every Friday night at a place called the Electric Lounge, which is a very famous place in Austin because they not only had rock bands, but they had like they would start every night from like 5 to 7. Their happy hour would be like a film. They had like a cinephile factor from like 5 to 7, and then from 7 to 9 they had spoken word. Slam poetry was just taken off. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was like competitive but kind of fun, punky poetry, spoken word.
Yeah.
And they're actually that slam team that year that I was there from 93 to 97, and that slam team was the #1 in the country. They did the Lollapalooza tour and with like the Bad Seeds and, you know, a bunch of other PJ Harvey, I think. But anyway, and I used to play every Friday night, and there was a band called, well, they were called Hominy Bob at the time, but they later became Drums and Tuba. And then Drums and Tuba were on Annie's label because her husband at the time was a huge fan of them. So I was playing a place called Manitobas, which is no longer there in New York City, but it was Dick Manitoba from the Dictators. He had a club, again, a punk rocky sort of club, pictures everywhere of the old punks. And they had entertainment. I was playing there one night. My friend, Brian Wolf, who was in Drums and Tuba on Annie's label, called me and said, hey, I'm going to get down there early and help you with your sound or whatever. So I knew something was up. But he brought Annie down to see me. And then we ended up hanging out that evening, having some food. And then a couple weeks later, I got a call. Could I open her one date? It was at a college or something. And I think there might have been 3,000 or 4,000 people, which at that time was the most I had ever played for. And I opened her, and then I got a call a couple weeks later, would you like to do maybe 3 dates with her in a row? And I, of course, said yes. You know, besides, it was, you know, she was always very nice, supportive, and her crowd was always receptive. And then I got a call maybe a month after that. You want to do like half the tour, which is 14 dates with her. And I did that. And then, you know, I think little by little, you know, she was just trying to see if I, you know, was well behaved. You know, I didn't eat with my feet on the bus or some shit. And then, yeah. And then, you know, I mean, everything was always, you know, she kept her cards to her vest because I think she'd been burned before, maybe. So, you know, obviously when they were taping me live every night, I knew something was up, but I didn't. And I trying to think if I did have management at the time. So I think there was talk behind the scenes, you know, I wasn't paying that much attention to business. I was really, everything was kind of month to month and I'm just writing songs. And then we signed to the label. Then I was on the label for like 12 years. You know? I still, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's still a label or not, but occasionally I get checks. So I don't know. I think there's still a label.
So were you signed for a particular album, a number of album deal, and then it just ended?
That's a good question. Yeah, you know, I don't know. That's a good question.
What did you sign?
My experience, if I was to be 100% honest, my experience has been, and it's kind of worked out for me. Like, I think, and I don't say this in a pejorative sense. Like I don't really have any problem with this because this has been, because I'm so idiosyncratic, and because they don't expect me to sell 1 million records, they kind of leave me alone. All the labels do. That I've been very lucky. I've never had anyone like suggest, you know, you ought to do this, you'd sell more records. I think they think, this is so whatever, non-commercial, that he's never going to sell 1 million records anyway. I mean, I think it would be different over there because like the BBC does sort of embrace quirkiness. They've had experiences where something very left of center still sells, but over in America, I think things are maybe a little, despite the fact that there's infinitely more radio stations and more options for the artists. I think, you know, and this is conjecture. I don't know if, you know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. I don't have any statistics to prove what I'm saying is accurate, but I've never had any shit about what I should do. So they just kind of left me alone. You know, and I think things, you know, they think, we'll run it up the pole and see if she flies. And if it doesn't, I don't know. Basically, with Ani, and she just really dug what I did, and they're going to do. It's her label, so they're going to do anything that she tells them to do. I mean, that's then the next. I did Choochtown myself, and then I got picked up over there by Evangeline, and Evangeline was Andrew Lauder, and Andrew Lauder had big success with the Stone Roses, so and he loved the album, so they let him do anything he wanted to do. And so Choochtown, and Andrew Lauder was friends with Alan Jones, who was the editor of Uncut. So he passed it on to him, and then Uncut went crazy for it. And all of a sudden I had a career in the UK, which for me just meant that I had another place to tour and make money. I mean, I've always had to, I'm like a brush salesman. I got to find new territory,
On that, do you have any fun tourist stories of your many visits to the UK?
I don't know about. I mean, I like going there because people go out. England and Ireland. Over here, it's hard. Although over here we have something now, which again, I sort of organically, there was no plan, but I do a lot of house concerts here, which you guys really don't do over there. And they're great, like you don't have to deal with the noise in the pubs and the whatever. I mean, there's, 40, 50, 60 people sitting in a room that really want to hear the music and, who are shockingly generous. So, I mean,
do they need
it's a real
license?
thing.
Sorry, do they need a license to do that? Because I don't think it exists here.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. No, I mean, it's just people in their homes, just opening up their homes, setting down chairs and, making a concert. Sort of setting in their home, But no, but I had as I said earlier, I had a dear friend who passed away. We had similar tastes in music. He was a Lou Reed, I mean, archivist, really. The estate of Lou Reed should actually, Dave Riley was his name. And he was just a great guy. So and it's funny because we'd hang out for, 4 weeks a year, and he'd drive me around. He initially started as a fan. He became a dear friend and he'd drive me around. So I'm trying to think, there, not anything specifically hilarious. It was more, this isn't really my image, but it was heartwarming, frankly, to hang out with a friend. And, him and I had a lot of laughs, but I can't think of anything that, no paint cans fell on my head while I was performing or anything.
Okay. Your lockdown live streams really helped me at a time when I was going through a mental health struggle. As someone that never knew their father himself, it was lovely to see you and your son Detroit bond through that. What have you both gotten out of this?
Well, the pandemic or the live streams?
Well, yeah, just generally the pandemic, and because I think you were together for a long time.
Yeah.
Have you gotten closer?
Well, I mean, before I get into this, it's important, really, that I preface this because I've made some mistakes in the past. Detroit's mother, my ex-wife, we were together for 25 years, and we split up when Detroit was around 6, and we get along very well. I wouldn't be with someone for 25 years if I didn't respect her on many levels. And she was was and is a great mother. It was very 50-50. However, because where I live, which is in Ossining, which is about 20 miles north of the New York City, of the George Washington Bridge, I live right on Hudson River, but the schools are great here. And Detroit's mother lives about 20 minutes north, but Detroit had to live with me by law the zip code, in order to go to the schools here, which I wanted him to go to school here, are great. And he lived with me. So, you know, I was going to make sure that I was always in his life. So he started touring with me. I mean, we've probably done 200,000 or 300,000 miles in the car together, starting when he was 6 years old. So and I've always sort of spoken to him like I would speak to, you know, my tour manager. Right? So we're very tight, very close. And, you know, he's lived here with me. So I kind of brought a kid up on the road. I mean, very sort of vaudeville or, you know, circusy, I guess. But, you know, it worked out academically. He loved school, which was very diametrically opposed to the way I hated school. Schools were great. The teachers were phenomenal here, very progressive. They were teaching, you know, Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn, and also this is primarily a Hispanic community. So Detroit, as a white kid, was a minority in his class. So we were always very tight. So in some respects, the pandemic had no effect on our relationship. Now, the no touring thing and the live stream thing came about again out of necessity. And as it turns out, our interaction, people responded to it. There was no plan, but he, you know, initially I think he thought, oh, there's going to be 10 people, and you know, so I think the first one we had, there was 300 or 400 people, and he was talking to all of them in the comment section, and there was a community there. He brought something to my attention, actually, because we did one the other day for my birthday, and he brought something to my attention afterwards. He said, you know, at your show, they can't talk. Your fans can't talk to each other. But on these, while you're doing these live stream things, they can comment and they can talk, and their interaction is another, you know, selling point or whatever, makes the thing interesting, I guess. And yeah, so you know, the pandemic didn't affect we're tight. I mean, and now he goes to college in Manhattan. So I think the pandemic affects his college experience more. Actually, you know, there's a lot of bonding that he hasn't been able to do because of the pandemic. You know, but that's lightening up a bit here. So that having been said, I mean, I'm trying to move back to Austin, Texas in February to work on. I should have a new album done here, which is going to be a radical departure from my style prior, and not lyrically, but production wise. And then going to try to work on a one-man show when I get to Austin. So.
Tell us the backstory to, it's really, really fun, it's hilarious. Tell us the backstory to Meet the Parents.
Well, I never did really meet them. How do I frame this? I was dating a woman who I still wish I was dating. But anyway, her, you know, and she would tell me her parents were, you know, and we shared similar tastes in music, which frankly is liberal and you know, to the left. And she would tell me stories of her parents. You know, I think one of the, I don't know how it is over there, but one of the saddest or most interesting aspects of the Trump administration was not just the sort of emotional bludgeoning that he would do with you, Trump would. But it was finding out friends and family that were supporters of him. I didn't luckily have any firsthand experience in this. I didn't have to sever relationships with any of my families or anything. But a lot of people did, and it's still, and it's sad. And, after 4 years of Trump and all that he did, which was on a day-to-day basis, it was like being in an abusive relationship. And then, then 73 million people voted for him, So, I mean, they wanted 4 more years of that. It's hard to believe. So anyway, but the woman that I was dating would tell me about experiences she had with her parents. She would go there, and the Fox News was constantly on. It was very, very loud. And so it was very easy to imagine a sort of humorous scenario where I had to meet them and keep myself edited and polite and cordial through a meeting where finally I can't take it anymore. I think the line specifically is the straw that broke the Hamell's back. And I go off on a rage and, tell them, well, this is how I feel, for God's sakes. It's just gets a few chuckles through the pain.
It is a very, very funny thing, and people should just check it out because it's hilarious. Your songwriting is very political. How do you rate Joe Biden?
Well, I know what the tact was. The tact was, obviously, we need an old white guy because we can't do anything. Bernie would have got his ass handed to him. I mean, he's an old white guy too, but he's an old, hugely progressive socialist, Democrat socialist white guy. But they were never gonna, and they weren't gonna. I didn't realize. The older I get, the more naive I realize I am. I didn't realize how much people hated Obama. My circle of friends, I've unfriended enough people on Facebook where I don't deal with anybody that, and people say, oh, you only want to hear what you agree with. And yeah, I don't really want to argue with people. And what became, obvious during the Trump administration was that, you could, like I had a friend in Boston, and he's a lawyer, and he's a smart guy, and he's a patient guy, and he's an articulate guy. And he would, nicely comment on, like, let's say Bob was a Trump supporter and said some stupid QAnon stuff on his Facebook page. My lawyer friend would say, Bob, good to hear from you, and hope your wife, Kathy, is well, and we love golfing with you. Here's why you're wrong. And then he would patiently explain to Bob, why he was wrong. And he'd write tomes of patient, loving, whatever. Never once does Bob go, you're right, I'm going to change my vote. No, they could. So it was futile. It was obviously, they drank the Kool-Aid. They were always going to drink the Kool-Aid. Patience, facts, none of this was going to sway them. So my attitude is unfriend them. I don't have enough time already. Trump, he would say something outrageous. I mean, he was brilliant at guiding the conversation. And he would gaslight. So he might say, blah, 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 we should have, murdered, incarcerated that whistleblower, and then everybody goes, well, the man, and then he changed to some other thing like, and the immigrants at the border. Oh, he was brilliant at fucking keeping you busy all day long if you paid attention. And I couldn't stop paying attention. It was horrible. I mean, I would have started doing drugs again. It just drive me nuts. So how do I rank Biden? I rank him as relaxing, quite frankly. I mean, it's a fucking shitty job. Let's be frank. I mean, you're never, not only you're never going to please all the people all the time, but it's more than ever is it apparent that a lot of the people are, I hate to say this and here's where that administration, the Trump administration, really messed me up. Prior to them, I thought I was a people person. I would talk to people at the airport and the cab driver, and I think, he's a good guy. He's just trying to put food on the table for his kids. But now I walk away going, well, he might be a good guy, but I got to ask him a few questions now. And I became, and I'm, skeptical of humanity. I've become infinitely more misanthropic because of Trump. And I don't know at my age if I'm ever going to change back to being Mr. Glass Half Full guy. So,
wow.
So Biden, it's just relaxing. I mean, frankly, I've gone back to listening to more, I used to listen to a thing called Democracy Now, which is, right. So every day, that was a daily thing. And then there's a podcast that I highly recommend. It's called Pod Save the World. It's three guys that used to work for Obama, intelligent, articulate, very informed guys. That's 3 times a week. And I don't listen with the same sort of, the ratings have all gone down. I'm sure all the networks, the stockholders wish that Trump was back so they could make more fucking money. But it was driving the people in the country crazy. I don't know. When he first got in office, I predicted the Civil War, and it damn near happened.
Nearly happened, yeah. How did America get in the position where a failed reality TV con man could get elected? How did he win against the most qualified person to ever run for president? Is it because she was a woman?
Well, before we get into the Hillary thing, I think you know what? I'll answer your question, and let me preface this by saying I'm not, I don't believe in astrology. I'm not a New Age guy. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy. I think QAnon people are, stupid or duped or both. But I am kind of a karma guy. I do believe, I think a lot of us do. Yeah, you do good things happen back to you. You do bad things happen to you. Let's be frank. The country, we don't want to admit it, or 73 million people don't want to admit it. The country was built on genocide and slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Hitler, curtailed your country's imperialistic ways,
mm-hmm.
I would venture to say that Trump became elected because, I'll tell you a story. My son, Detroit, was a very big Bernie fan. And I was unquestionably a big fan of his philosophy. Did I think that he could get elected? I was skeptical at the time, and more skeptical now. But anyway, while he was running to see who was going to be the Democratic candidate against Hillary, I was taking my son to school, and I was listening to NPR, which is extremely progressive.